I've heard people say your life flashes before your eyes when you die, but no one ever said it happens slowly, piece by piece, long before the end actually arrives. My name is Penelope Jones, though most people call me Penny.
Except Mason. He never liked shortening my name. He said Penelope sounded like someone worth saying in full, someone who mattered. I used to laugh whenever he said that, pretending it didn't melt my insides. He's Mason Brown, Maple High's golden boy star quarterback, the boy every girl wants, and the one I somehow got to grow up with.
My neighbor, my best friend, and the boy I've loved quietly since I was 9 years old. The summer before senior year was our summer. I didn't know it then, but it was the last moment of my life before everything started slipping. One night, he stood beneath my window, whisper shouting, "Penelope, come down. I'm here to rescue you." And I did, because you don't ignore an invitation from the boy who unknowingly owns your whole heart. He took me to the community pool after hours. The place was dark, except for the streetlights reflecting off the water. "Mason," I whispered, "the pool's closed. How did you get the keys?" He smirked. "Courtesy of Brett. Lifeguard, owes me a favor." The whole night felt like a dream I wasn't ready to wake up from. Mason splashed water in my face, laughed like the world couldn't touch him, and looked at me like I was something worth staring at. I didn't mean to fall in love with him that night, but I did. Or maybe I just finally admitted it to myself. Everything changed when he kissed me. It wasn't planned. He just cupped my cheek with wet fingers and leaned in, as if he'd been waiting his whole life to do it. And then everything unraveled in the softest way possible. My first time, my first everything with Mason Brown. I wish life stopped there. I wish time had frozen in that dark community center with his lips on mine. But the cruel thing about life is that it keeps going, even when your heart can't. The next morning, reality returned too fast. Mason asked if I wanted to be his girlfriend. He was nervous. Mason Brown nervous, and for a second, I felt the ground tilt beneath me in the best possible way. Then the fear hit. Because I am dying. I have cancer, and it's not the pretty kind, the kind people survive in movies because the plot demands it. Mine is the kind that steals your hair, your weight, your strength, your future. Mine is the kind that leaves people behind shattered. Mason already watched cancer take his mom. I refused to make him watch it take me too. So I looked him in the eyes and destroyed him. I told him the summer meant nothing. Told him he was terrible in bed. Told him he wasn't someone I wanted a future with. The light went out of his face so fast I thought he might collapse. And then I walked away. I went to school the next day pretending I wasn't breaking apart. People whispered. Valerie laughed. Mason tried to talk to me. I avoided him like he was poison, even though the truth was the opposite. He was the only person keeping me alive, but wanting him would ruin him. So I pushed harder. Still, I was selfish enough to want one perfect moment before I died. Romeo and Juliet, the play Mason and I obsessed over as kids. The one we acted out with plastic swords and makeshift costumes. When auditions opened, I thought just maybe I could have that one last memory with him. I wished too hard. I got the role of Juliet, and Mason refused to play Romeo. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "You don't deserve to play Juliet." That one hurt more than chemo. Valerie made it worse. She ripped my scarf off in the hallway, exposing the thin patches chemo had carved into my scalp. People stared, laughed, whispered. She opened my bag and pulled out the medical papers I'd been terrified to let Mason see. I froze. I couldn't breathe. My entire world narrowed to the sound of my own heartbeat. And then Mason was there. He grabbed Valerie's wrist so fast she squeaked. "Leave her alone," he growled. He wasn't the carefree boy from the pool that night. He was something sharper, protective, furious. When he finally let go of Valerie and she scurried away, he glanced at me, really looked at me. I could see the part of him that still cared, the part I had tried to kill. He walked away saying, "Don't read into it. Anyone would have stepped in." But he was wrong. Only Mason would have stepped in. Not long after, I fainted in class. My nose bled everywhere. When I woke up, I heard someone crying near my bed. Mason, he'd carried me to the nurse's office, stayed with me, refused to leave. He begged me to tell him if I was sick. I lied again, said it was stress, said I was fine. His mother had the same symptoms. He was connecting dots. I couldn't let him connect. That afternoon, he offered a truce. He even agreed to play Romeo again. But I couldn't risk giving him hope. So I set a rule. Don't fall in love with me. He laughed, said, "All right, Penelope, you always win." But the softness in his voice betrayed him. During rehearsals, we had to waltz. I stepped on his foot at least 5 times, and he still smiled like I was doing something magical. We practiced the balcony scene. The air between us spun like gravity flipping. His voice softened as he said the lines. "Oh, then, dear saint, let lips do what hands do." I kissed him, just a quick, reckless, stupid kiss. He kissed back like he'd been starving for it. For a moment, the world made sense. Then I ruined it again. "It's just acting," I whispered. His eyes dimmed. Everything between us cracked further when Dean walked in, loud, smug, and unbelievably good at making Mason angry. I lied again, claimed Dean was the one I wanted. Mason left looking like I'd punched him. I keep hurting him, over and over, because that's what love has turned into for us. Valerie threw a house party a week later. I didn't want to go, but my mom pushed me, saying, "Let yourself have a moment." So I put on a dress that used to fit better, covered my thinning hair, and pretended I wasn't dying. When I arrived, the whole room stared. Some snickered, some whispered, but Mason looked at me like I'd walked in glowing. "You look, wow," he breathed. If he knew how close I was to fading, would he still look at me that way? Dean hovered around me for attention. Valerie clung to Mason in an exaggerated way, laughing too loudly at everything he said, glancing to see if I noticed. I pretended not to care, but jealousy is a loud, cruel thing. It echoed between us across the room. The air inside felt too hot, too tight. My chest ached the way it does when my blood levels drop. I slipped outside to breathe. Mason followed, of course. "Why are you pushing me away?" he asked. "What happened to us?" "Everything. Nothing. Cancer." But I couldn't say that. So instead, I told him the only words that could save him. "We're just friends, Mason. That's all we'll ever be." His expression cracked, and he whispered, "You can shut me out, but I'm not giving up on you." I wish he would. It would make dying so much easier. Rehearsals became the only place we functioned. Shakespeare's lines hurt more than they should. Every word about love and fate and death felt like a prophecy carved for us. Mason watched me closely, too closely. He noticed every flinch, every wince, every time I touched my chest or wiped a nosebleed too quickly. He's getting suspicious. One afternoon, he stared at me for a long moment and finally said, "I don't know what you're hiding, but you're not going through it alone." I turned away before he saw my eyes fill. Because love is not always holding on. Sometimes it's letting someone go so they don't drown with you. Mason is Romeo, I'm his Juliet. But our tragedy was written in hospital rooms, not in Verona. Still, just once, on opening night, beneath the stage lights, I'll get to be his. Just once, the world will let us pretend we have a forever, and after the curtain falls, I'll disappear quietly, before he ever has to watch me die. People think tragedies end with death, but that's not true. Tragedies end with the moment before death, the second when the world holds its breath, when silence stretches so thin it feels like it might tear. That's where I am now, suspended between the life I lived and the one I dreamed of. Tonight was opening night. The audience clapped, cameras flashed, people cried at the right moments. They'll call it a performance, but for me it was a confession disguised as Shakespeare. Every time I looked at Mason under those stage lights, I felt the truth rising in my throat. like a final breath. And when he leaned in during the scene where Romeo says, "Thus with a kiss I die," my whole body trembled. Because for me, it wasn't a line, it was a countdown. After the curtain fell, everyone rushed backstage, laughing, hugging, celebrating. But Mason found me in the hallway behind the auditorium, lit only by a flickering exit sign. I should have run. I should have lied again. But I didn't. He touched my cheek, gentle in a way that made the whole world go quiet. "Penelope," he whispered, "what's wrong? Why won't you let me in?" I could have confessed everything right then. The diagnosis, the timeline, the reason I broke him on purpose. Instead, I did the cruelest, softest thing I'll ever do. I smiled. A real one. The kind he hasn't seen in months. Because that smile, that was my goodbye. "Thank you," I whispered. "For what?" he asked. "For being the best part of my life." He didn't understand. Not then, but he will. I slipped away before he could stop me. My mother was waiting in the car, eyes red from pretending to be strong. My chest was tight, my limbs trembling, but my heart felt strangely light, like everything I needed to say to Mason, I'd said without words. And now I'm in my room, writing this last letter I never meant to write. Mason will find it someday, tucked between the pages of our old script, where the margins are filled with doodles he made when we were kids. He'll read the truth I never had the strength to speak. I loved you. I loved you more than the years I was promised, more than the time I lost, more than the ending I feared. But love isn't about holding someone close. Sometimes it's about letting them go before the darkness reaches them. Tomorrow I'll start treatment again. Stronger doses, longer hospital stays, less time at school, less time in this world. But tonight, for the first time in forever, my heart isn't breaking. Because I got what I always wanted. Not a future, not a miracle, but one perfect moment. A stage, a spotlight, and the boy I loved saying my name like it meant something. If I close my eyes now, I can still feel his hands on mine during the final scene, the world watching, our breaths mingling between lines older than both of us. Maybe Shakespeare knew something we didn't. Love isn't the happy ending. Love is the story you leave behind. And Mason, you are my whole story. Always. Even when I'm gone. Hospitals used to scare me. Not the needles, not the machines, not even the smell of disinfectant that clings to your clothes long after you've left. What scared me was the quiet, that heavy silence that makes you feel like the world has moved on without you. But today, as I sit here waiting for the next round of treatment, I'm not scared, because something happened after the play. Something I didn't plan for. Something that might unravel every lie I ever told to protect Mason. He found the letter. Not today, not yesterday. I don't know when, but I know he found it, because this morning a nurse came into my room holding a single red rose. "It was left at the front desk," she said. "No note, just this." But I'd know that handwriting anywhere, messy, slanted, carved into the stem like a secret meant only for me. Penelope. Not Penny, not P, my full name. Beneath it, in the smallest script, a second word. Why? My heart nearly stopped. He knows. Or at least, he knows enough to start asking the questions I never wanted him to ask. Before I could process it, my mom rushed in with her coat half on. "Honey, someone's been calling non-stop for you." A boy. She didn't have to say who. I haven't answered the phone. Not because I don't want to, but because I don't trust myself not to break. But the universe doesn't care about what I want. Because just now, while I'm writing this, my hospital door opens, and I hear the last voice I expected to hear here. My heart becomes a drum. He steps inside slowly, like I might disappear if he moves too fast. He looks exhausted. Sleepless eyes, wrinkled shirt, hair pushed back like he ran his hands through it 100 times on the way here. And in his hands, my script. Romeo and Juliet. Our script. Its pages are warped from tears. His tears. He places it on the chair beside my bed, without looking away from me. You lied to me, he says quietly. You lied about everything. I feel something inside me crack open. Not the small, quiet cracks I've been hiding. Something bigger, something impossible to patch. Mason, no. His voice breaks, but he steps closer. You don't get to push me away anymore. Not after this. Not after knowing what you've been going through alone. I turn my face away, but he gently lifts my chin, the same soft touch he used during the balcony scene. Only this time it's real. I'm not leaving, he whispers. Not now, not for any reason, not even if you tell me to. A tear slips down my cheek. You can't save me. He swallows hard. Maybe not, but I can stay, and I will. Something fierce burns in his eyes, something I've never seen before. Not anger, not heartbreak, determination. Mason, this isn't fair to you. I don't care, he murmurs. You're not a tragedy, Penelope. You're my beginning. My breath catches. He sits beside my bed, takes my shaking hand, and says the words that will change everything. We're going to fight this, together. And if this is the start of your second act, then I'm not letting you face it without me. A second act. A sequel I never thought I'd live long enough to have. For the first time since the diagnosis, something spreads warm and strange through my chest. Something that feels alarmingly like hope. Because maybe stories don't end where you think they do. Maybe the curtain doesn't fall. Maybe the audience hasn't left. Maybe, just maybe, the next chapter is waiting for me. And Mason, he's walking into it with me, hand in hand.